Fantastic. So, Jean, since you and I are sort of the co-hosts here, I'm suggesting that we might, kind of divide the time so that, I could spend maybe like 30 minutes or so interviewing a couple of people here around, what's going on with them.
Yes.
And then get a few responses around that. And then I'll hand over to you. It's around perhaps, is it 2:35 or something like that, just to kind of split the time. I don't know what you think about that. Would that work for you?
That's great, I guess.
Okay, fantastic. Hi everybody, it's great to be here. So I've been thinking about what we might talk about. And so I then just thought about, the courage work. And a lot of you might know about it, but some of you might not. So courage is basically a methodology around responding to trauma that helps people who've gone through very difficult times to kind of step into stories that can be more sustaining of them. And so I've been thinking a lot about how courage is relevant within the context of responding to the COVID pandemic and really just supporting people to not drown in the stories of COVID, because that's always the danger around the difficulties and the hardships that are going on in our lives, and thinking about how we might be able to rescue other stories and other narratives that can be more sustaining of us. So I've just thought about how I could use the courage framework, perhaps just to interview maybe just two people around what's going
Rezo.
She's frozen.
Oh yeah, we lost her.
So what do we do?
Just hope that she will come back.
Okay. Oh, she's back. You're muted. Nzelo.
Yeah, you're muted.
what happened there. Okay, thanks. Great. All right, fantastic. So just to ask you, Megan, around at this particular point in your life, what are you feeling grateful for? As you reflect on your current, space and where you are at, are there any particular things that you might, think about being grateful for, grateful about? Yeah.
Yeah. I found a lot of things to be grateful for in this season. My husband and I, our oldest daughter is 17, turning 18 in 2 weeks. So she's in her grade 12 year, and we live in South Africa, but we are from America, my husband and I, but our kids have grown up in only Nigeria and South Africa. So it's just a huge transition for our family, preparing to send one back for her to experience America for the first time. So this has given us just a lot of space for reflection, to really examine what do we want in the last half of a year together that we have together. What things do we need to do? What conversations do we need to have? And had we just been on the treadmill of life, I think we would have missed some of the opportunities that have arisen in this space. So it's allowed us to reflect together and to make plans that we may have missed. So that's something I'm really thankful for.
Okay. All right. So you've been taking the opportunity to kind of reflect on important things about your life and what's going on, for your future and with your family. And yeah. For you, Nana, what are you grateful for at this point in your life?
I mean, I look around me and we hear the news of everybody suffering. Firstly, I'm so grateful that my family, my immediate family is well. Everybody's alive. I'm grateful that we have homes, we have electricity, running water, because it's really, really sad out there. So I just look at it and I'm like, and even for this time, the same with Megan, to look at our lives, look at God, get a deeper connection with God. So I'm glad that I've been given that time to do that too.
All right. Okay. And so do you find any moments in your days where you are really joyful, you know, singing and even celebrating? Do you have any moments, and would you like to tell us about any of those moments and what will be going on for you, if that's an experience that you have even during those times?
I actually do experience that because we're not allowed to have people coming to help us at home. So I've been cleaning. It's my responsibility. And I find I kind of go into this meditative space. I put on music, I dance. It's also become a great form of exercise. So it just feels good that, you know, we're taking care of ourselves, we're taking care of our own homes.
Yeah. Okay. And for you,
For
Megan,
me-
how?
For me, just trying to start off the day on a good foot. So my husband and I go for a walk together. Then we wake the house up kind of, and just try to do that in a joyful way to welcome the day with joy, to make sure our kids see us smiling, because we know that living together, not seeing other people, you can experience conflict. So trying just to really start the day off with joy. For me, that involves also then doing my devotions and engaging with my daughters, especially her music and her art projects. That's brought a lot of joy to us. She's learning the not so pleasant recorder right now. So I've added the ukulele, and then we sit outside and we play her music assignments together. So finding ways to play together and to engage each other's worlds has really brought us a lot of joy, but it's also taken a lot of intention, because I don't always feel joyful when I wake up. And so to choose to walk in, you know, to the teenager rooms and say, good morning, it takes an intentional effort, but I find it does position us differently to walk through our day when we do that.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you can kind of just look at your life, and you know, are there things that you are grateful for having survived up until this point? Because I mean, all of us are here, and life has been a journey, sometimes with, you know, difficulties and hardships. But are there things that you're grateful for having survived and for having come to this point in your life? So, you know, Nana, do you want to speak a bit about what you might have survived in your life? Yeah.
You know, I listen to a lot of the stories of people who are in ICU, and it takes me back to the time when my father was shot and he was in the ICU hospital for over 2 years. I mean, it was extremely difficult. And that's when you have to be at your strongest, and you have to hold your highest faith. And that's where your connection with God has to be the highest. So I look at it, at least every night we're able to speak on the phone. Yes, we can't see each other, but at least he's still alive. And I just imagine what those other people are going through. I mean, it's incredibly hard, incredibly hard. So it gives me a lot of empathy towards them. But I'm very grateful that we've been through that as a family together.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And for you, Megan, anything that you're grateful for having survived in your life?
I mean, I think when we lived in Nigeria, we lived through two kind of turbulent seasons. We were 22, my husband and I, when we moved to Nigeria, and the Jos riots broke out 6 weeks after we moved there. I had never been out of America, not very far even out of my own rural state of Iowa. So this was quite shocking, for one, to be in Nigeria, which is quite an aggressive, wonderful and beautiful country, but it was shocking. And then to be met with so much violence and so much confusion, that was hard. And then we also lived in Abuja when Boko Haram started their suicide bombing, and those, that was, I think, a year and a half, we had 10 suicide bombs in the greater Abuja area. And I think having survived those things, knowing that we weren't alone, even when we felt so, knowing that hard things come to an end, and that we grow in really sacred and important ways when we can stay with the difficult parts of our journeys has been really helpful for me in this season. So to know there's going to be hard things in this season. We know we will survive them. God will grow us in really sacred ways if we can stay attuned and present to what's happening, not be overwhelmed by, staying with all the news and media. That can sometimes take us away from being present to the ways that we need to grow and the invitations to grow in hard seasons. So I think those 8 years in Nigeria really helped me to know that hard things end, and we have the strength to get through them.
Okay, that sounds like some fairly difficult times that you've been through, Nana, with your dad being short, and but coming at this point and realizing you survived that. And for you, Megan, your experience in Nigeria and the steps that you took to live in a different country. I think that sounds like, it could have been difficult. But I'm wondering about some of the skills that you used to survive, because I'd like to think about the fact that you survived all these hardships, or that is not by chance that happened, but that there might have been some skills that you were putting to use, to survive. And what might that be for you, Megan? Like, what skills might you have used? Yeah.
I think it was a skill I had as a child, but wasn't really realized until later, that I'm curious. And so that has helped me to get to know myself, get to know my own story, to ask questions. So staying curious was really important for surviving those hard things. And then my persistence to connect. I have quite a vivid emotional life. Sometimes if I don't connect outside of myself, I can really get stuck into that swell of emotion. And so persisting, saying just because I haven't heard from someone doesn't mean they don't care about me. So taking that initiative to reach out to a friend, to reach out to people, that has really helped me to not feel as isolated as I could have been had I not taken that step to reach out to people.
And so your skills of being curious and persistence around maintaining connections, it would be interesting just to learn about the history of these skills, like how did you come to acquire these skills in your life? Can you think of anyone perhaps in your life who might have passed them on to you or introduced you, to these skills? Yeah.
My grandmother and my mother were both very curious people. They were both teachers, and they were always learning and always asking questions and inviting strangers in. And in my part of the world, we lived in a farming community, so there weren't a lot of strangers. So when they would come, my grandmother and my mother would be the first ones to find them. And I think they modeled to something really powerful, to be curious and to love strangers, to love your neighbor, to take that initiative to reach out. And then to experience that in Nigeria in such a different way, to be enfolded into a different community that had different rules and different ways of being. And for me, it was powerful to experience that. And then I think gave me courage to do that myself in how I live and in how I get through hard things.
Yeah. And so does, your grandmother, know that you've been putting some of these skills to use? Do you think she ever got to know that she imparted these skills on for you? What do you think?
Well, they've both passed on now. But I remember one time we went home. I was quite shy as a child, so people were surprised I moved away and moved to Nigeria of all places. People had such bad perception of Nigeria, well, in America, but I think around the world, Nigeria doesn't have the greatest reputation. and so it kind of shocked people, and they weren't able to follow along with my growth. Seeing me in Nigeria and seeing the new things I was learning and the new ways I was practicing, the new ways I was unfolding. And so I remember going home one time and I was speaking to a group, and my grandmother said, "Well, Megan, it sounds like you're doing just as much work as Mike." And I said, Grandma, of course I am. You are the one who taught me that. But she was so surprised that I was doing things because she just thought of me as this very shy child. So I think a lot of the lessons were very nonverbal for me, but they definitely sunk in and have provided a great legacy for me.
Oh, lovely. I know we'd lost you a bit. So we've been kind of exploring stories around the skills and thinking about the skills that you might have used to kind of survive the hardships that you've shared about your dad being short. And yeah, so any skills that you thought, you know, you might, that you think you used to survive that, you know, situation personally and maybe as a family?
As a family, to always stand together, pray together. And remember, we're not alone. Personally, it's my mind works quite quickly. I have a lot of thoughts, which creates a lot of anxiety. You start thinking, what if this happened? What if that happens? And I'm one of those who used to go look at his charts and go Google things. So you have to learn to kind of try and keep your mind still, keep your thoughts still. Don't think about tomorrow because you can't do anything about tomorrow. It's about surrendering to God, which I think has actually been the hardest skill that I've ever had to do in my life. And even now, sometimes I'm able to do it, but sometimes I'm not. We can't control things. All you can control is your immediate space, what you're going to do. You can't control the next minute. So just be still. Another thing I learned, which I actually learned from my life coaching, was about kind of looking at different outcomes of situations, but making peace with every single one of them. So that when it comes, you're not going to lose your way. You'll be able to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know that, you know, you're very connected to your family and that you value, you know, family life and being together. And have you always had that as part of the family? Is there something that, you know, is new, or it's always been a part of who you've been as a family? Yeah.
Well, we've been close, but I don't think we weren't physically close and we didn't verbalize it. I remember being in high school, I heard someone speaking to her father on the phone. She was also Black, and she's like, I love you, Daddy. I'm like, what's wrong with the person? I mean, who does that? Then this was only after he was shot and stuff. Then we started saying these things to each other. Oh, I love you. I appreciate you. I miss you. We started hugging each other, and that has continued until today. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so, you know, we've got a few minutes to stay, but we also want to kind of acknowledge that we, you know, experiencing some difficulties as a result of COVID and, you know, so just to listen to what has been difficult, you know, in your life space, in your own life. Are there any specific things that you've struggled with, you know, as in this current situation that you might want to talk about? Yeah.
I stay with my sister.
Yeah.
Oh, Megan, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nana. Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
I think my sister's quite a small place. So, and we're never usually together for this full period of time because she goes to work, I go to work. So sharing your space with someone who is actually a very strong character has been quite challenging at times, where you actually want to just breathe. You want to be able to go out. Sometimes I just want to drive around. And then what's interesting about that is that when I see that the numbers are increasing, somehow I start getting afraid to go out. I'm afraid to go to the shops. Like I was telling you yesterday, I went to the shops and someone touched me. And I was panicking because you can't really control these things. So the fear has been a big element, and the sharing of my space.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been really hard, you know, the space issues, and I'm hearing you talk about that, but I've heard that's a very big story right now around, you know, communities and the lack of space and what that might mean for people in terms of social distancing, but also space in terms of being with people every day, which is what you're talking about, you know. Yeah, so I hear you. And for you, Megan, what has been hard maybe during these times?
For me, probably the hardest thing has been just like the peaks of loneliness that I felt. I mean, my three children, my husband, were all in the same house, and, you know, we have phone calls with families, but I think the quality of connection sometimes can be quite surface level. So it's not a connection that leads to being seen or to, and friendships that I usually hear from, I haven't heard from. And I think just in general, a lot of people are struggling, but then you start to think, oh, did I do something wrong? Did they not care about me? Your mind can really start to go down trails that aren't very healthy. So that's been for me the biggest struggle, not to catastrophize, like not hearing from people, but also just learning from you just how our our gifts and our strengths, they have histories and they come from places. But for me, remembering also that my struggle with loneliness, it's not just now. It's maybe being highlighted now because of the lockdown, but there's been elements of feeling lonely. So digging into what themes are maybe surfacing now that have always been there, and what can I do to maybe strengthen connection, to work through the loneliness, because it's not like it's going to automatically go away once lockdown is finished. It might for a week or two, but that deeper feeling of loneliness might still be there. So yeah, I've just tried to get curious and reflect, knowing this is maybe an opportunity that it's highlighting something that I need to work through.
Yeah. Okay, so when you feel very lonely, and as you're saying, this is something that's not new. Loneliness has visited you from time to time in your life. What are some of the things that you do that are helpful? Is there anything that you do that helps you to feel less lonely, or anything that comes to mind?
I think seeking out connection. So who could I send a message to that I feel like I can trust, even if I don't hear back from them, I know they'll hold it with, that she's sending me love. But also engaging my body, just to work through, those emotions that just get trapped sometimes in our bodies. So jumping on the trampoline by myself or with my daughter, or digging in the garden to just get outside and move my body, because I find sometimes if I go inward in this loneliness, I just keep going inward, and then my whole body just kind of shuts down, and all these feelings get trapped inside. So that's been really important for me, to keep moving through it and to stay curious and not be overwhelmed by it, is to keep connecting, but then also, just move my body.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And for you, Nana, feeling fearful, are there any things that you do that help you to feel less fearful?
Church, listening to sermons on YouTube from different pastors, that really, really helps. And it's quite great. Listening to music, relaxing. Oh, and these long bubble baths with candles. Just relax my mind. I think being relaxed is key. Being relaxed is key.
Yeah. So that kind of helps you.
For you, what has been your most challenging time during this time?
For me, I think it has been, moments when I've felt anxious. And I think I've shared a bit about that. I've felt quite anxious sometimes. And I think it's because when I'm listening to too much news, I find it does that. So I've had to kind of learn to kind of reduce, what I'm listening to, and try to stay, positive. But it's also trying to find ways of getting a sense that my life is not on hold because of COVID. And I think that's been my greatest fear. The fact that, it could capture me and stop me from being who I want to be and the things I want to do. So it's been extremely important for me to find a way to keep going. And I think introducing the online trainings has been very significant, because at least that's helped me to kind of continue doing what I love to do. And I think that's made me feel less panicky about life and the future, and just, not being able to be myself. So I think that has been kind of helpful. Yeah. So thank you so much. My next question would have been about broader context, for following the courage framework and what's going on broadly, but I'm aware that time doesn't allow. So I would like to just maybe interview quickly, if I could talk to Aju and John about anything that's been interesting for you in these interviews. What stood out for you? What have you been particularly drawn to as you've been listening? To my conversation with Nana and Megan. So can I start with you, Aju?
Oh.
Yeah. So what has been particularly significant for you? Like, what have you been drawn to listening to the conversation with Nana and Megan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many things. First of all, I'm from Nigeria.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that was a connection. And just being allowed to come into your or to come into your family. I could imagine you coming for Megan going to the your daughter's room and just be trying or being intentional about being cheerful and joyful. For Nana, I could see her cleaning and dancing and music. So I was transported in terms of noticing that and noticing the connection with music, with God, because that's also what I connect to. Yes.
Yeah. Right. And what kind of images of Nana and maybe with Megan did you have as you listened to them talk, and anything that kind of stood out or as a mental picture? Yeah.
I think obviously there were so many mental pictures, but I connected with her and with Nana, dancing and all that. And I also connected, these moments of anxiety where, you go out and somebody touches you. So for me, the pictures that both Nana and Megan talked about, I was able to be in it with them and, feel what they were describing, they were feeling. Even the moments of reflection and the moments of loneliness, where you are surrounded by people, you are with people in the house, but the idea that there's so many other people that you are not connected to in that kind of way, even though you might see them here and there on Zoom. Can bring. So I don't know what I'm answering the question, but I definitely was able to get into what they were describing.
Yeah. And what's your sense about what is important for Megan, for example? What do you think might be important for her in her life? Did you get any sense of, some things that are quite important for her?
Yeah, that connection, the different ways that she tries to be connected. I was also surprised by wanting to move, and moving being something that helps her to cope in this, because I was surprised because that was not something that she talked about earlier on. And so, that it tells us the importance in our life right now or something. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay. And anything about Nana? Anything that you had a sense about Nana and what's important for her in her life? Anything come to you around, as you listened?
Yeah, I think God, from different, right from time, that was the theme that I recognized, and this idea of going to YouTube, and listening to sermons, because, I do that, sometimes when I want to fall asleep, I don't know whether that's the intention of the sermons, but when I want to fall asleep at night and I'm not able to do that, I turn on YouTube, and that's a relaxing thing for me to go to sleep. I don't necessarily hear what they're saying because I fall asleep, but I don't know why it's a common thing for me. So, so I connect, I see that God is really an important part of her life that she brings to, in addition to family. I really get that sense of.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. And just as a last question, what has it meant for you personally, like listening to the two, how has this moved you, or what's been important, particularly for you? Where is it taken to you to, yeah.
First of all, it's just a privilege, that I'm in Pennsylvania, I'm connected to you guys in such an intimate way. I just met Megan and Nana, and I know so much about them, and what is important in their lives. So I connect with that, and I don't take it lightly that this is able, I think the previous people that talked about how instead of social distancing, we're, I think, social close bringing, that this opportunity has really brought me so close to people back home. Back home for me is Africa, so connected in a way that I'm able to experience and hear their local knowledge and local experiences. So that's what it is. Just amazing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview Nana and Megan and Adju for responding. And I'm so sorry, Jean, I couldn't ask you aware of the time, and that I need to kind of hand over to you at this point. Yeah, and so, yeah, it's great. Thank you, guys. It's lovely.
Thank you.
It's really a privilege to hear you. Yeah. So over to you, Jean. He's on mute. I'm not hearing.
Yeah, John, you're muted.
Yes, I was thanking Megan and Nana for the sharing, especially I like the metaphor of inside and external connections that Megan brought. In a way, I connected very much to it. So we'll continue kind of sharing these, let's say, African stories or stories from Africa by inviting Mrs. Yahweh Frazi. Yes. So this is what I want to propose to our community. I want Edu and Naselo to be in a reflecting team with me. So I will invite you at some point to, if there is any question you would like to ask to Yahweh Frazi to continue, help her sharing her story and also developing it in a more meaningful way. And I would like to ask Megan and Nana to listen as an outsider witnessing. So at some point I will ask you just what stuck out for you. So, and in Ivory Coast, we mainly speak French. So we prefer to speak in French the way we do in the everyday. And I will do my best to share the highlight, not translating integrally, but just what could help you to get the story. So, Madame Yahweh Frazi, bonjour. Vidéo.
Audio, c'est ça? D'accord, bonjour, je suis là.
Tu es là, ok. Donc, j'étais en train de dire que je veux leur partager pourquoi je vous ai invité.
D'accord.
Quelle est la raison qui m'a motivé? Ensuite, je reviens. Ensuite, les deux autres collègues peuvent partager, poser des questions que mon partage a suscité chez eux. Et puis, les deux autres femmes qui ont été aussi invitées comme vous vont aussi partager ce qui les habite en écoutant à notre expérience.
D'accord.
So,
c'est bon.
Mrs. Yahweh Frazi is a special advice to the president of the state in Ivory Coast. So I've been honored to have her in my life. She is currently the coordinator of compendium for women competencies. So this is it's a state compendium, but she was the one who founded it. And the vision of the compendium is how to empower women to become leader in their communities. And she mainly works with rural women. Of course, she's living in the state, in the capital, but she's always in the rural to help women be empowered and become the leaders for change in and for their local communities. So the idea of helping local communities is so powerful in her way of living. And she believes that women have potentialities to participate in the decision making at the level of the state, but also to work and organize communities.
Okay.
So I've been strongly struck by that. And what struck me the most is what I came to understand, the honesty, the coherence, and the solidarity in action by her story that she shared with me, or even by reading in the news about what she is doing, or by listening to people when they speak about politicians and how she is perceived in a very different and special way. It's very moving. And now, to respond to the COVID-19, she created an organization she called BAS, base d'amour et de solidarité, so it's kind of base of love and efficient solidarity. Because she used to work with women within the communities and also and mainly including the women sellers. And so she realized that the experience of women in this critical moment is as if they have two choices: dying from COVID-19 or dying from hunger. Because the confinement caused these women who are selling in the market, the lockdown, to stay home. They have no salary. They care for their families every day by what they have sold. So then she came up with this metaphor, so powerful: dying from hunger or dying from COVID-19. So what to do? But so basically it's how to respond to this situation in a way that this woman should live. Then she create the buzz, inviting men and women to practice solidarity by collecting $1 or more to support those women, to take care of their families, to take care of themselves. It's so powerful. And she was more focused on saying, we don't have to wait for international organization to help us. Please, you are out there, give what you have, $1, $2, and let's put this together to help the most vulnerable, and mainly women sellers. So it's so powerful, and that's why I'm so privileged to have this opportunity to honor what she's doing and what she's doing mean to me. So I'm wondering, as Edu and Naselo were listening to this story, are there questions you would like to ask to Mrs. Yaoi Frazi? Anything you want to know more about from her?
I think personally, I'd just like to say I really appreciate and I'm very grateful for people like her in the world who care about women, and to say that I share a similar passion around supporting women who carry the brunt of poverty and domestic abuse and violence. And I come from a society where, we have shared concerns around what is going on with women, and particularly looking at what COVID has done, the COVID pandemic has done to women in our communities and in our societies. And so, really grateful that there are people like her in the world who, continue to fight for the vulnerable, the marginalized, and people who are often invisible. And so maybe my question would be around, hearing more about her hopes, for women, but also being curious about what sustains her in doing this work, what keeps her going, because I'm acknowledging that it's important work, but it's often work that is, challenging and difficult to push. So I'm very curious about hearing more about her hopes, but what keeps her going, and maybe even what she's learning from this experience. Yeah.
So thank you. I will come back to her and then after to Edu. So, Yaoi Frazi,
Yes.
Nacielo dit qu'elle est très, très, très ravie de savoir qu'il y a des femmes comme vous qui s'engagent pleinement pour la cause des femmes. Elle-même, c'est aussi sa passion du côté voilà, c'est aussi sa passion du côté de l'Afrique de l'Est. Et donc, ça lui fait plaisir d'entendre ce que vous faites. Et elle voudrait davantage vous écouter sur votre espérance pour les femmes. Qu'est-ce que vous espérez pour les femmes en Afrique? Et qu'est-ce qui vous permet de continuer ce que vous êtes en train de faire? Qu'est-ce qui vous soutient?
D'accord.
Oui.
Je dis merci à tout le monde. Je m'excuse, je comprends un peu l'anglais, mais j'arrive pas à m'exprimer, donc je vais le faire en français. Mon espérance, c'est que je crois en la potentialité des femmes. Et j'estime que cette potentialité-là n'est pas utilisée. Donc, quand on a créé le Compédium, c'était pour renforcer cette visibilité, cette participation, ce leadership. Moi, ma foi, c'est que si les femmes leaders, qui ne se sentent même pas leaders, sont aujourd'hui au poste de prise de décision à tous les niveaux, intellectuels, rural, jeunes, nous allons arriver à relever l'Afrique. Je suis pour la valorisation et non pour la victimisation. Maintenant, l'expérience, ce qui me soutient, comme je dis, c'est ma conviction profonde. Je crois en cela. Et je suis croyante. Je sais que l'humain est au centre de tout. Donc, j'essaie de lutter pour cette justice sociale, pour cette valorisation, pour faire passer les femmes et même les pauvres de la pauvreté à la dignité. Et dire aussi que moi, Euphrasie Yao, vous, Père Messengue, il y a plus pauvres que nous. Comment faire pour retrouver ces personnes? Et je sais aussi qu'en Afrique, on aime trop recevoir. C'est-à-dire, on est habitué à recevoir de l'extérieur, On est habitué à recevoir des politiciens. Or, aujourd'hui, avec le Covid, on nous a montré ce qu'on pensait depuis nos valeurs du compédium, amour, solidarité, audace. C'est le moment. C'est le moment. Avec le Covid, tout est bouleversé. Moi, je dis que c'est une grande opportunité pour dire qu'il n'y a pas que l'argent, il n'y a pas que les ressources, il n'y a pas que la politique, mais ce qui va nous soutenir, c'est la solidarité active, organisée, que nous devons avoir pour pouvoir avancer. Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu à sa question.
Oui. Merci beaucoup. So, let me share briefly the response, Nana. So she said that her hope is that she strongly believes in women potentialities. She believes in that. And she's also convinced that women's potentialities are not used enough in Africa. So she is for women leadership at all levels. And she believes that if women's potentialities are used rightly in Africa, and only by that, we then lift up Africa. So her dream is to lift up Africa by integrating, empowering, and supporting women's leadership, using women potentialities at all levels, at the institutional and community levels. And now, about what keeps her going, she said she's a believer. So I will say her faith. And as a believer, she strongly cares for social justice. This is what is holding her. And she wants that humans be at the center of everything that we do. And this time of COVID-19 crisis for her is an opportunity, at least for Africa. She highlighted strongly that we like asking and receiving from outside, but since COVID-19 is affecting the world, so then we have to face our own challenge.
Yes.
By practicing solidarity in action. So solidarity in action, in which she believes, if she thinks this is the right time, so to call all Africans to believe in it, to practice it, and it is that will save Africa, not just now, but will help Africa in general and for the future.
Et puis, pardon, excuse-moi, j'ai des résultats, ça fait 30 ans d'engagement. Il faut expliquer ça, j'ai des résultats avec le Compédium depuis 10 ans, qui est un meilleur programme africain. Je peux expliquer ça pendant au moins 2 heures. Et puis, il y a la créapaire qu'on a créée, il y a la base, c'est-à-dire que j'ai déjà vu les résultats de cette stratégie que j'adopte depuis 30 ans. J'ai 30 ans d'engagement au service du genre, de la justice sociale, de la paix et de la valorisation des compétences. Donc ça aussi, ça me motive parce que j'ai vu l'expérience.
So she's saying that what also helps her keep going is also the evidence of her own initiative, because she's coordinating and leading compendium for women competencies since 2011. So she has evidence, and like how in the rural communities you were able to gather women to help to have water in these villages by gathering and leading the communities. So she has evidence that the way she is leading and acting is effective because it brings changes that she sees. So I'm coming to Edu. As you have been listening and smiling from time to time. So, any curiosity, thing that you want to listen more? hear more from Yahweh Frazi.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you, thank Yao for um, really the work that she's doing. I do agree. My heart goes out because my own village, I am worried about people dying of hunger. This idea of do you die for COVID or do you die of hunger is so real because a lot of people are market sellers. And they don't even have enough to buy for the week. And so this program is really needed. In my own community, in my own village, we are trying to figure out how to be able to get money together and buy food, enough for people who don't have enough, and lockdown. So I'm curious as to what has been surprising about, what she has found surprising in the efforts during this crisis. What is sustaining or making her more hopeful or hold on to that hope?
Thank you. I'm looking at the time now.
Yeah.
I would like Megan and Nana, if they can say in 1 minute what stuck out for them by witnessing to the sharing we have right now.
I think it's really beautiful and I love it. Because here in South Africa, there's this debate going on. Should people die of COVID or should they die of hunger? And she has found an alternative. She's actually gone to the people and say, let's help each other. I think that's beautiful. And I'm actually curious to hear if people were more than willing to do it or if they were hesitant. What was the attitude like initially? But it's a pleasure to have heard from her. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Megan, 1 minute possible, just to say a word of what took out for you. Megan, do you hear me?
Yes, sorry, my internet kicked me off for a moment. Sorry, Jean, did you say a question? Because I just got back on. I missed a little bit there.
Just by what stuck out for you, by listening and witnessing to the story we have been sharing. If there's any word, any image, because we are running out of time actually.
Yeah. What stood out to me was just the beautiful way that maybe this challenge has the potential to highlight indigenous knowledges, because when outsiders come in with solutions, often they're not always centered to the knowledges that have actually helped us overcome challenge in historical ways. And instead of looking outward by looking inward, new solutions may emerge that wouldn't be possible if outsiders were coming in to solve problems. And so it just gave me a lot of hope as she was talking, just her belief in women, that women have potential and that needs to be highlighted and needs to be given platforms, and that new solutions may emerge from this season that may not have been possible before.
Thank you. I know she listened to English, so she understood what you meant. Now I want to ask her to say a word. How was it for her to be in this place? Yahweh Frazi,
Oui.
pour vous, qu'est-ce que ça signifie de vous retrouver?
Oh, he's frozen.
Je suis heureuse. Je suis heureuse. J'ai essayé d'écouter ce que les autres disent. Je comprends. Et je suis prête à revenir ici pour échanger toutes ces expériences qui sont si nombreuses et si belles. Je pense qu'on apprendra les uns des autres pour avancer ensemble. C'est aussi cela, la solidarité active. Voilà.
Thank you.
On voit plus le père, hein. Bon.
Does anybody besides Jean?
Jean is muted when he's talking.
Le-
John, can you unmute yourself?
On l'entend plus. Bon.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to my
Ah,
work.
voilà.
So,
You
but
hear-
annual, we are finished. So, with the happiness that we are all connected to. Steve, I give you back.
Just thank you all so much. It was such a joy to listen in on this, and exciting to think about the initiatives that are taking place and the possibilities that might come from people listening in on this and hearing about this, and the heartening and inspiration that is happening. And Selah, I don't know if you had a last word too, that just quickly, anything you want to say about your experience of being here for this?
Really great. It's been really lovely being able to connect across different worlds and to feel that sense of solidarity and that we are not alone. And so thank you for creating the space. It's been wonderful. So thank you, everybody, for opening up yourselves to this. It's been wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ansela. And Jean, any quick reflections about your experience?
I think it's so powerful. Just I was wondering now is that how this project came about. I want to hear more, maybe not here, but like, yeah, how come that this project in this right moment, yeah, come about?
Well, hopefully we'll
Thank you.
find some space to have that story told someday. It's a silly one. Much love to you all. Thank you. We're about to leave Africa and quickly cross the Atlantic and enter the Western Hemisphere with our little waves. So peace to you all.
Thank you. Lovely.